Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the GRE Strategy Workshop. The Graduate School is honored to introduce Ms. Catherine Schultz, who is the Director, Academic Partnership at ETS, and Ms. Dawn Lipker, who is the Associate Director for Academic Partnership at ETS. The GRE Strategy Workshops should be very useful for students interested in knowing better about the GRE general tests and services, and we are truly grateful to ETS for their continued partnership and support of students here at WKU. With that said, Ms. Catherine Schultz and Ms. Dawn Lipker, it is your opportunity to talk about the GRE general test, and we are immensely grateful in advance for your time and the support that you provide to our students.
Great, thanks, Dr. Kudali. As Dr. Kudali said, Dawn and I are from ETS, and we're here today to give you some information about the GRE general test and also give you a lot of information about the free resources that are available for you. So we're going to dive in because we have a full agenda. There we go. Here's the agenda for today. We are going to start at the very beginning, which is setting up your ETS account, registering, how to register for the GRE general test. We'll give you an overview of the test, what to expect, tips and strategies, and then how to prepare for taking the GRE. And we'll also even dive into this scoring, so you have a sense of what the scores mean, and then also how to send scores to the different schools that you might be interested in attending, if it's not WKU, of course, and then all the resources that are available. Just to mention, depending on what you plan on studying, the GRE general test is accepted around the world for a variety of master's programs, doctoral programs, business programs, including MBA programs, law schools, and also some institutions will use it for awarding fellowships. But it's very flexible as far as the different types of institutions and programs that accept it, and also keeping in mind that it is good for 5 years. So even if you take it now, it's still good for 5 years. Just a quick overview about where and how you can take the GRE general test. It is available through our test centers. There are over 1,000 test centers worldwide in 160 different countries. When you take it in a test center, you will be taking it on a desktop computer, and it has the full screen capabilities and a keyboard and mouse. You can take a look at the different test centers at the link below, and we will be sharing this with Dr. Kudali, who will post this PowerPoint, and all the links are live links, so you'll be able to utilize these links too. Something we're really excited about that's relatively new is now you have the option to take the GRE at home, which is very convenient. It's the same, it's identical. So it's the same content, the same format, the experience is the same, except you're in the comfort of your own home. The score scale is the same costs and everything. The only difference is that you're not in a test center, you're at home. Like the test center, you'll be monitored, but in this instance for home edition, you would be monitored by a proctor. It is a live proctor. The session is also recorded as well. And so those are the main differences between taking it at a test center or at home. Come on. Like I said, we're going to start at the very beginning. So we're going to start with registration. So you'll need to create an ETS account. And so I have a screenshot here, and you'll just go to create account from this URL here. And so then once you create your ETS account, you're really going to want to make sure, or when you create your account, you're going to want to make sure you have your ID handy because you'll need some of the information on there. And also, it's very critical that what you have on your ID matches what you're going to put into your profile. So I'll show you that in a second, but it does need to exactly match. So like for your first name, I have to put Catherine, I can't put Kat, I can't put Kathy. I have to put what's on my driver's license, which is Catherine. And then also supply your full last name. And so when I say full last name, if you have a hyphenated last name, you want to put your full name. Mine is Fields Schultz, but Fields is my middle name now. So I would just put Schultz. Here's just a view of what that first screen will look like when you go to set up your profile. Hold on one sec, I'm gonna exit you guys out over here. One sec. And so you'll see anything with an asterisk on it, you need to fill out, and it's required. Let's see, anything else on here that is pertinent? I just wanted to show you what it would look like. So let's just take a look at an example. So in this example, Jose Fernandez de Cordova has an accent in the last name. This, however, is how you have to type it in. There are no accents because the system doesn't recognize the accents. So that's the only difference in what I said earlier, in that it has to match your ID exactly, since the system is not able to view those characters. So just go ahead and type it like this. All right. So once you finalize your ETS account, then you will be able to register. So you'll see here the register and find test center button. What you'll want to do when you're thinking about your registration or test date is to take a look at what is the deadline for the program that you are applying to. And so whatever programs, let's say you're applying to a couple different programs, make sure you get the earliest admission deadline so that you can back out your preparations and study for that. Also, when you register, just a note that you can also sign up. We'll talk about this as we go along, but you can sign up to opt in for the GRE search service as well. We'll get to that in a sec, but just wanted to mention that now. Let's see here. Oh, something that's really key is that when you are registering, let's say you're going to take the home edition, you will still click register and find test center to select your test at home option. You will get an email confirmation, and as this note says here at the bottom, just make sure you save that email because it includes your link to start your test on test day. So just a couple tips as far as registration. Like I said, make sure you know your application deadline so you can back out your test date and then your study time. And then if you register early, you'll be sure to get the best time and date and location. Let's see here. Oh, I did put a link here. We did put a link for the GRE information bulletin. There's a lot of information in the bulletin, so you'll want to be sure to visit the website and download that bulletin. The website also is chock full of just tons of great prep tips too. I wanted to mention before we kind of dive into the details that we do have the GRE fee reduction program. It is available to individuals who can demonstrate financial need or who are unemployed. Also, there are different groups for underrepresented first-generation college students that also have vouchers available. That voucher is 50% off of the regular test fee. So that's great. And then you also will get a voucher for free test prep materials too that have a value of about $100. All right, just some of the nitty gritty. I won't read this screen to you. You can take a look at it later and or look on the website, but I will give you a couple highlights here. You cannot use a tablet or Chromebook or your phone or mobile device. Also in the middle section here on the microphone and speaker requirements, you cannot use a headset or like earbuds or earphones. And then camera requirements. Before your test starts, let's say you're doing it from home, so this is the at-home requirements, you will be required to show a 360-degree view of your room, which also includes the top of your desk. And so just be sure to take a look at this to make sure you have all the system requirements, because if you don't meet the requirements, you will not be able to test on your test day. So just take a look at these system requirements and make sure that you're able to comply with all of those. All right, so now, without further ado, let's dive into the GRE general test. The GRE has 3 different sections. It has analytical writing, verbal reasoning, and quantitative reasoning. I'm going to cover the analytical writing section, and Dawn is going to cover verbal and quantitative reasoning. So let's take a look at the analytical writing first. So the analytical writing section assesses your critical thinking and your analytical writing skills. And there are 2 time tasks that you'll be given. And it's really to assess your ability to articulate and support kind of complex ideas, construct and evaluate arguments, and sustain a focus and coherent discussion. And so the 2 writing tasks, one is analyze an issue and the other one is analyze an argument. And so the analyze an issue is going to require you to analyze a specific issue, develop your own argument with kind of reasons and examples to support your personal position. And then the analyze an argument is going to require you to assess the logical soundness of an argument that is presented to you. And you'll just want to follow the task directions. You will be typing this essay response on your keyboard, and it does include basic functions like inserting your text or deleting and cut and pasting, but there's no grammar or spell check, so you're on your own there. Get through that. Okay. I have a link here to our topic pools for those 2 different writing tasks. You're going to really want to go on the website and take a look at these published topic pools so you get a sense for the kind of questions that will be asked. I think it actually includes all the questions that are asked, and there's one for the issue topic pool and the argument topic pool. So there's 2 separate PDFs that you'll be able to link to. You'll also be able to take a deeper dive in reviewing how it's scored, because these are scored by raters. And so you'll get a sense of what the raters are looking for when they're evaluating your essay. Let's see here. What else? You want to also make sure you kind of practice as you practice and prepare, that you practice under timed conditions, because these are timed tasks. So you're going to want to practice just to get the sense of being able to do that. Pay close attention to the task directions, obviously, and it's good to kind of organize your thoughts and kind of sketch an outline, so then when you go to write your essay, you have kind of a nice cogent way of putting your thoughts together. Also, save a few minutes at the end of each time task just to check for errors. An occasional spelling or grammatical error isn't going to affect your score, but if you are persistent or you have serious errors, it will detract from your overall kind of effectiveness of your writing and could potentially lower your score. So just keep that in mind as well. On the issue task, you want to make sure that you support your position on the issue with your reasons and examples that you can draw from your reading experience, observations, or your own academic studies. I already mentioned to leave a few minutes at the end to give yourself time to review them. Also, it's really a good idea to avoid kind of irony or humor, like too much excessive humor in your essay responses, because it may not translate well or might be misinterpreted by the readers. So that's also something you want to keep in mind. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Dawn now as we close out analytical writing and move on into the verbal reasoning section. So take it away, Dawn.
Thank you, Catherine. So we're going to take a look at the verbal reasoning section. In this section, it's going to assess your ability to understand not only what you read, but how you apply your reasoning skills. So you'll see on the slide here the question types that you'll encounter. There'll be reading comprehension, text completion, and sentence equivalence. Let's go through those really quickly. The reading comprehension questions, they're either going to be multiple choice or select in passage. When we say multiple choice, it means you might be asked to select one answer as a multiple choice or more than one answer. So make sure you read the directions clearly. The select in passage, it's going to ask you to highlight your answer within the provided text passage. Next, you're going to look at the test completion questions. These are going to be one or more sentences containing blanks, and they could be anywhere from 1, 2, or 3 blanks, and you will fill in the answer by selecting a choice to each blank that's presented. And finally, what's on here is our sentence equivalence. So this is going to require you to select 2 answer choices from a list of 6, and when you insert those into the sentence, it's going to create 2 sentences that are alike in meaning. So please keep in mind what's really important here is that GRE does not award partial credit on the questions that require you to provide more than one answer. So it's really important to get those questions right, and all the correct answers must be selected to get full credit. Next are some tips and strategies. So when you're thinking about the reading comprehension questions, you want to make sure you read the entire passage to get an overall sense of the message or the meaning before you answer the questions that pertain to them. You also want to make sure you answer strictly on behalf of what the passage says, trying not to pull from outside knowledge. And after you choose your answer that contains blanks, it's a really good idea to always go back and reread the whole passage in its entirety, just to make sure that it makes sense. You might even want to try to fill in the blanks with your own words and then find a corresponding word to that fill in the blank passage. And sometimes it's really helpful just to identify phrases or words in the passage that just seem significantly particular at that time. Next, what you're going to see on the tips and strategies are just some better understandings of ways that you can understand what abilities are being assessed. So when you see those first few bullet points, from identifying a passage to recognizing assumptions, this is how the assessment is looking at your abilities. But in order to support the questions that assess these skills, the reading comprehension has to be both logically and rhetorically complex. It can't just merely be a collection of facts or assertions. One question we get a lot is reading materials, right? Where can I find really good reading materials to help prepare myself? We highly suggest you look for material that presents an argument, but is also supported by reasoning or evidence. And you can find these in academic journals, feature articles in newspapers like the New York Times, The Economist, Scientific American, or the London Review of Books. Also, trade books by experts or journals for general audiences are a good read. A tip we ask you that you want to stay away from are textbooks and popular periodicals. Really aren't good sources of material because they don't demonstrate the kind of complexity that are found in the GRE reading passages. So now that we did a high-level overview, let's take a look at the quantitative reasoning section. So in this section, it's going to assess your ability to interpret and analyze quantitative information and to solve problems using mathematical models. So what you see on your screen now is there are 4 question types. I know it says 1, 2, and 3, but 2 is kind of a double whammy. So if you look at 1, the quantitative comparison is where you're going to compare data. On number 2, multiple choice, those could be where you select one answer, or multiple choice where you have 1 or more answers, choices. Also, you're going to see numeric entry. This is where you have to solve the problem for the correct answer and enter that problem, enter the answer in the appropriate field or fields where it's required. When you're looking at what is really focusing on for the quantitative reasoning, it's really focusing on basic mathematical skills of elementary mathematical concepts. So think about arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. But just so you know, there is an on-screen calculator. It's available during this section, and it can be brought up using the calc button. We're going to actually show you where that is in just a moment. And it's not needed in order to answer every question, but it may be faster for you to actually estimate or use other methods than the calculator based upon your test taking skills. So when you look at, this is an actual screenshot of what the test looks like, the whole bar at the top. The general test features a test taker friendly design, so you can approach the test using your own best test taking skills and strategies. What we mean by that is you have the ability to go back and forth within one time section. You can reconsider and change your answer. You can even mark questions that you answered and you want to come back and review them before exiting the section. And one of my favorite strategies is you can skip questions, ones that feel kind of complex, to come back to them at a later point before exiting the section. You'll also see at the top of the page, there's a help button. That's really designed to give you directions on how to answer specific question types, directions for that section, or just general directions. And then also up at the top, what you'll see is the calc button. It's available again only on the quantitative reasoning section, but once you select it, it will appear. And then you select it again to make it disappear. So let's talk about some tips and strategies for this particular section. So one thing to keep in mind is that the geometric figures you see may not be drawn to scale. So you might want to avoid overestimating sizes by side or measurement. You may even want to draw your own figure or diagram or make a list to help you sort out what the question is actually asking. Another tip is to try and avoid really lengthy calculations. You can estimate, round up numbers, try to use different skill sets or different strategies before you get stuck on a really hard one that you find a little bit more challenging. Another one is after you arrive at the question or arrive at an answer, just reread the question. Make sure it's reasonable given what the question has asked. And again, we do have, as Catherine mentioned before, some more additional problem solving strategies on the GRE website, which you can see the hyperlink right there to help you really prepare to do your very best. So something you might not know, which is always good to prepare going into it, is that both the verbal and quantitative reasoning sections are what we call section level adaptive. Probably thinking, what does that mean? And what it really means is that the computer selects the second section of each measure based upon your performance on the first section. So a strong performance on the first section means you'll receive more difficult second section, and that difficulty will be taken into account during the scoring process. Your final score on each of these measures is based on the total number of questions you answer correctly, including the difficulty of the question. But test takers always ask us, hey, is it better to leave something blank if I'm unsure? And what we tell you is it's always best to answer a question, even if in that moment you feel like you have to take a guess, because points are not deducted for wrong answers. Okay, Catherine, I'll throw it back to you now.
I'm so sorry that there was a timing thing on it and it advanced. I just wanted to mention too, though, before I advance to the next slide, is what Dawn just mentioned is that it is kind of a myth buster. You just always want to take your best guess. Don't leave it blank.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to walk through kind of the structure and format of the test so you get a high level overview of what the whole experience will be like. The first section you'll encounter is always that analytical writing section. That's always first. That is made up of one section with those 2 different timed essay tasks that I mentioned. You'll have 30 minutes for each essay response. So for a total of 60 minutes in that analytical writing section. Both the verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning sections measures are comprised of 2 sections each. These sections can actually appear in any order after the analytical writing. So you might get quantitative reasoning next and then verbal reasoning, or verbal reasoning and then quant, but analytical writing is always first. Each verbal reasoning section contains 20 questions, and you'll have 30 minutes to complete each section. And then each quantitative reasoning section contains 20 questions also, and you have approximately 35 minutes to complete each of those sections. In addition to these, you'll either get an unscored section or a research section. And let me break that down for you. And an unscored section means you will get an additional one of these sections. Well, it'll be verbal reasoning or quantitative reasoning. So you should try to do your best on all the sections. If you receive a research section, it will actually be very clearly identified, and it will always be the last section of the test. And research just means we're looking for your feedback, and usually you're actually entered into a pool of some sort if you contribute to that research section. Neither of those unscored sections will count towards your score. So in total, though, with all those sections, so there are 6 sections in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those, and then one of the unscored or research section makes 6. And you'll have a 10-minute break after the 3rd section. And so approximately the GRE general test should take you 3 hours and 45 minutes to include your timed break. All right. Now, Dawn mentioned this up at the top here. You'll see you have all these options as you're going along, one of which was the mark and review screen. And so this is what the review screen looks like. You can mark, as Dawn was saying, something that, oh, you know, I want to go back and revisit that. If I have time, I'm going to go back and look at this. What's nice about this is it lists all of the questions in a section and the status. So did I answer it? Is it incomplete, or is it not answered? So incomplete might be like a multi-answer type of a question. And so you might have answered 2 of the blanks and left 1 undone. Like Dawn said, you don't receive partial credit. So you're going to definitely want to take a look at the incomplete or not answered, or ones that you just want to go back and review. But it's nice because the table will tell you exactly the number of question and what the status is, and whether you marked it to go back and take another look. So it's really nice to be able to kind of make sure that you've answered all the questions completely. All right, now let's take a look at how the sections are scored. The scores in the analytical writing section are reported on a 0 to 6 scale. There are half-point increments available. The scores for the verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning are reported 130 to 170 score scales in 1-point full increments. We can dive into a little bit more on scores if you want later, if we have time. But if we don't have time, the website can tell you a little bit more about each of these sections. I'll just give you an example just so you know what is on the website too. So like for the analytical writing section, each essay receives a score from at least one trained rater using that 6-point scale. So the raters are actually trained to assign scores on the basis of the overall quality of an essay in the response to the assigned task. The essay is then scored by an E-rater scoring engine. That's a computerized program that was developed by ETS, and it's capable of identifying essay features related to writing proficiency. And so then if the human and the E-rater engine scores closely agree, the average of those two scores is used as the final score. If they disagree or are too divergent, then a second human score rater is going to review. And so that kind of detail is on our website. And so you may want to look at each of these sections to gain that insight on how each of these sections is scored. And I'm just going to go to this next page here too, because these are some of those score interpretation resources that you might want to take a look at. We have oodles of resources on the website, so, and they're free. So please just make sure that you take advantage of those. All right. Now I'm going to dive into just some general tips. We each gave you tips for each of the specific sections, but these are more kind of overarching, general tips. You do want to become familiar with those question formats and the directions beforehand, and like you can look at all of that ahead of time. So it's definitely going to be worth your while to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be spending the time during your test to do that. Obviously, be aware of your time. There are time sections. And so you want to make sure that you're kind of keeping on task, but don't rush. To help you keep on pace, when Dawn was talking about kind of that section at the top, there is a clock that appears on the screen. So it tells you how much time you have left during the section. Now, some people might get nervous with this clock kind of going in the background. So you can actually hide the clock if you want. But during the last 5 minutes of the section, the clock will appear. So you know that you kind of need to start wrapping things up. What else? So make sure you understand what each question is asking by really reading the questions. I know sometimes we want to just jump ahead and try to start answering, but make sure you read the whole question because, as we said a couple times, there's no partial credit. So just make sure you understand what the question is really asking. Answer every question because, as we said, it's better to make your best guess than leave it blank. At least you have some chance of getting it correct. And then we've included this link to the prepare section of the website so you can go directly to some of those resources. So all the questions are rated evenly, let me just rephrase that. No question carries any grade or weight. So it's always best to provide an answer to every question, like we've been saying, but and make sure you don't waste time on questions that you find that particularly challenging or difficult, since no question does carry grade or weight. So just move on, mark it, come back to it. Throughout the test, make sure you watch your pace, mention that, and then always just review the screen before finishing to make sure you've answered all the questions. Now, Dawn's going to talk a little bit about what to expect on test day.
Yeah, so as you prepare, sort of going into it, knowing what to expect gives you such a leg up on doing your very best. So we're going to talk about what you can expect on test day, whether you're looking at a test center or at home. So Catherine mentioned this in the registration portion, but you do have to have the following with you if you go to a test center: your valid ID with your name, signature, and photograph, In addition to that, you should also keep in mind the names of the schools that you would like to have your scores sent to. Just saves you a little bit of time. When you arrive at the test center, you will receive a writing utensil and a supply of scratch paper. You can get as much scratch paper as you need throughout the test administration, but please know you're not allowed to take that with you from the test center. Now, if you're at home, as Catherine mentioned, you will have a human proctor. They're going to ask you to show your ID, to show your computer screen, using a mirror or your mobile phone. They're also going to ask you to show a 360-degree view of your room using the computer camera. And as we mentioned before, the entire session will be recorded and monitored by a human proctor. And just so you know, your photo will be taken at that time as well. Something additional for the at-home testing, you can see on there the valid ID and you can see the mirror, but note-taking materials, you can't use the pen and paper that you would at the test center. Actually, you could use a small whiteboard, or you can use, the clear sheet protectors. You can put a piece of paper through it so the proctor can see it. So when you write down your notes or you write down things, that's a great way to do your outline. It's a great way to do some of your quantitative reasoning, but you will need to show the proctor once it is erased each time so they can make sure you're not keeping that information, but that's something you'll need for the at-home test specifically. So jumping a little bit more, this is for the test center specifically. At the start of the test, your photo is going to be taken. A sample of your handwriting is also going to be collected. You will be scanned with a handheld metal detector to make sure you're not carrying any electronic devices, anything you may have even forgotten about. That's when you'll receive your writing utensil and your supply of scrap paper. We mentioned you can replenish the scrap paper at any time. And please note that the testing room will have both human proctors and electronic surveillance. When you're looking at the at-home test, you will be asked to run a final systems check to fix any issues. It will detect things like dual monitors, anything that you maybe forgot to unplug, and all the issues need to be resolved before your appointment time. It's a really good idea to close all your browsers, close all applications, things that might be running in the background to prevent bandwidth issues. And speaking of bandwidth issues, it's probably a good idea to make sure you don't have a lot of other devices at home that are pulling on your bandwidth, like turn off if you're streaming Netflix or if there's other things that are connected, just to make sure that you don't have any issues or delays in your test. But if you do have some sort of delays, we got a way to help you better understand exactly how you can contact your proctor. So at the at-home test, if you need to contact the proctor, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say that. That's right. If you're more than 12 minutes late, it will be canceled. You can go ahead and next screen, Catherine. So if you need to contact the proctor, you can actually speak to get their attention, but there is a log me in chat as well that's available. It may take just a few seconds for them to reply, but if they are trying to chat with you, there'll be a little blue owl that bounces up and down in the corner. Before the end of the test, as we mentioned, you'll need to erase all those notes in view of the proctor if you're doing the at-home net transparent sheet or whiteboard. And if you experience any technical issues, if you can't speak to the proctor, the number on the screen will also be provided to you so that you can contact Proctor U at that time. Now, during the test, as Catherine sort of mentioned this at home or previously, in the at-home test, there's an optional 10-minute break after the third section. There are 1-minute breaks between the remaining sections. Please know those break times cannot be exceeded. You are allowed to leave your seat for the 10-minute break, but you must remain in your seat for the 1-minute breaks. Any unscheduled breaks are not permitted. Please know that artificial intelligence, as this is at home, will verify your ID throughout the test when you return after your break as well. So now that we have an understanding, hopefully, of what you can expect on test day, some strategies for a strong performance, let's talk about your scores and how to access your scores. So after the last section of the test, you're going to be asked if you want to cancel your scores permanently. Please know we do not recommend this. Even if you're not feeling 100% confident, we recommend you do not cancel your scores at that time. We recommend that you move forward so that you can review and report your unofficial scores. At that time, you'll see your unofficial verbal and your unofficial quantitative reasoning scores, and then you can decide if you want to send your four free score reports to your actual schools, or if you don't want to choose at that time, you can wait and choose later. We are going to talk about something in a moment called Score Select as well. Just remember that your GRE scores are good for 5 years from the date that you take it. So let's say you choose to report your scores. You finish, you want them to go to the school. You're going to see a screen that pops up that looks exactly like this. It shows your unofficial scores, and then you get to move forward. What you'll see next is going to be a designating institution. So after you see your scores and you decide you want to report them or not, like I said, you don't have to report them at that time, but what you need to know is if you do not report those at that time, you will have to pay $27 for each additional score report later. So it's a good idea to report them at the time. We do offer also what's called Score Select. Now, Score Select helps you to put your best foot forward. Whether you take the test once or you take it again within the next 5 years, you can send only the scores that you want institutions to see. This is only available with the GRE test. So let's say, for example, you're viewing your scores at the test center. You can decide at that time the schools that you want to receive your scores from all the tests you've ever taken in the past 5 years. It's included in your four free score reports. I'm going to get that soon. But let's say you decide not to send your scores that day. You can always send individual scores or your select scores for that additional fee of $27. And the way you do it is your ETS account, which is how you register. You would just sign in to designate the schools that you wanted to choose at that time. The biggest thing to keep in mind is whether you send your scores after the test or whether you send them later, the option is selected for you to choose one score test, or any option. That way you can send scores from any test you've taken within the last 5 years. So you have that option if you wanted to take the first time and you wanted to save those scores. Maybe you want to retest and then send the scores. You can choose to send both or just the scores that you feel most comfortable with. We do mention here that just keep in mind, some schools would like to see the applicant scores from every GRE test they've ever taken. So it's a good idea to check with the admission departments and the schools or the programs that you're interested in to see if that's something that they require. So let's talk about sending your scores. Let's say you do want to send them the day that you're finished with the test. You'll see a screen that looks just like this, and you'll see a blue box that said add a score recipient. You select that box. And once you select that box, the country of the score recipient is going to be in a drop-down list. If the school you're going to is in the United States, you'll then select the state from there. A list of institutions will be displayed, and you select your desired institution from that particular list. Now, some departments, specific departments, want GRE scores as well. If that's an option where they want it to go to a particular department, that will be in the next step as well, and that score select option. So let's talk about when you'll receive your scores. So about 10 to 15 days after your test, you'll be able to view your actual official scores through your ETS account. They'll include all scores in your reportable history, and that's been in the past 5 years. So when you view them online, you can print a copy for yourself, your own personal records. Again, if you decide you want to send your schools at that time, or you have additional schools or programs you would like to send your score reports to, you can do that as well through your ETS account. I mentioned the score select option. Keep in mind that if you take the test more than once, you can send all the scores or just that set scores from that one particular test date that you feel the most comfortable with. And we do have a short video on our GRE website that helps you understand the score reports a little better, and that's located in that slide as well. What we want you to know is that you never really have to send scores that you don't feel reflect your best ability level, right? You always have the option to test again. With the GRE general test, you can test every 21 days, up to 5 times within a continuous rolling 12-month period, so within the year that you first took the test. So you have other options. And if you'd like more information, I think this is really fantastic, and some people don't necessarily know this is an option, but you can get information on your performance of the test that you just took through the free GRE diagnostic service. Again, you can get through this for your ETS account. This really is helpful because it gives you information on how well you did on the verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning sections on the test you took. You can see a summary of the questions you answered, the ones you got right, the ones you did not get right, and the difficulty level of each. And also you can see how much time you spent on each question. This is really helpful, especially if you're planning to take the GRE test again. Again, it's delivered about 15 days after your computer delivered test. So let's take just a peek at what it looks like. So this is a sample of the verbal reasoning section in the GRE diagnostic service. And what's going to show you is how the questions in each section are organized by question type. So you can see in this sample that the test taker saw a total of 7 longer passages in the reading comprehension questions. 3 of those were answered correctly and 4 incorrectly. So the table represents, if you can see on here, I know Catherine's showing you on the icon. Thank you, Catherine. The level of difficulty for each question, as well as how much time was spent on each question. So Catherine, I'm going to throw it back over to you to talk about a few more tools.
All right. So we've mentioned many, many times that you can access a lot of different resources on our website. We've listed a few here, but I'll just go through some of these. You'll see section overviews for each of those measures. So we mentioned that a little bit. And so you can see that the general tips and advice. You'll see sample questions, which I think is very helpful, and explanations that go along with it. And then those scoring guides that we were talking about. I feel like it really helps you to understand what to expect and how to approach the test when you understand what it is that is being asked of you. Also, there are some resources called Power Prep. And so there's a test preview tool, and then there's also online practice tests. So nothing better than trying to, practice a little bit and get some of those timed practice tests, and it helps you simulate that day of test day. Also, if you feel like you need kind of some math refresher or math review, you can access some GRE math review materials. If you want to go a little bit deeper into that, you'll see links to the Khan Academy that you can use as resources. There's also GRE math conventions. So if it's been a while and you're like, I don't really remember what math notations are or these symbols, terms, you can just look at this GRE math conventions. And then there are practice materials available in accessible formats as well. So, and more information too, if you have any accessibility needs. I think we're going to go into a little more detail on that, but one thing, and just in case I missed it earlier, is that if you do need any kind of concessions on test day or accessible requirements, you need to do that in advance. You need to request that, and it needs to be approved in advance. So if you just show up and say, hey, I need these concessions, you can't get it on test day. You really want to look on the website to make sure that you know how to go about requesting that in advance. Something special for those that attend today or that are going to review the recording is that we have a special promotional code today. We talked about some of the fee reduction programs that we have, but just for attending today with WKU, you can get $30 off the GRE general test, and just know that it expires 45 days from today. So if any of your friends missed this session, make sure to let them know about this promo code. All right, so now kind of moving to things that can help you stand out. There are a few things we've mentioned, but I want to mention them again. And so let's just take a look here. We mentioned the GRE search service. When you're creating your profile, you can opt in to the GRE search service. That means that programs looking for potential prospective students will be able to see you and find you, and they may actually send you some materials about their program. And so you can sign up when you register, but you can also go back into your ETS account at any time and opt into the GRE search service. It's just a really nice thing. You'll be able to get materials from different programs that you may never have even heard of. So that's one nice thing. Also, we encourage you to take a look at gradschoolmatch.com, and you can create a free profile there as well and highlight your academic experience and your educational goals. It tells you kind of things, it gives you a format to follow when you're creating your profile. And so you could search programs that are of interest to you. Also, though, institutions and programs are also actively searching for students that might fit their programs. And so the platform allows you to find these programs, but it also allows them to find you as well. So if you think about a matching type service, you can bookmark them, they might bookmark you, and then you have a match. And then you can go from there and see about more information. The platform Grad School Match also has a resources section. And so you can go in there and find all sorts of different grad school type resources. Let's see. All right. I know that the PowerPoint, we've put a lot of the links in there for you already, but I wanted to just make sure that you have another link here and multiple others that we're going to share. But the website is just full of a lot of material, a lot of information, test dates, locations, all sorts of materials. We mentioned the GRE bulletin before. It's like, if you have a question, that's actually the resource we're going to look at to first see, oh, is the answer in the GRE bulletin. So that's a great resource. Let's see what else. You'll see there, I have listed a bullet here for those that there's a supplement for test takers with disabilities or health related needs that you can take a look at. Okay, that's pretty much the highlight here. So it's always nice to kind of get together with people who are going through the same experience that you are. And so those that might be planning to take the GRE, or even those that have taken the GRE, you might want to hear what other test takers are saying. So we invite you to join the conversation on the official GRE test page. Like, there's a Facebook page, there's a LinkedIn page, there's an Instagram. You can watch a lot of videos on YouTube. Also feel free to check out these other GRE official pages, the WeChat, the Zihu, and the Weibo. Sorry. So those are some resources there. And then just a few more links. Let's see what else. Oh, that's it. All right. Wow, we flew through that. So, gosh, we have plenty of time if you have questions. And honestly, I didn't do a very good job of watching the chat since I was also advancing the slides.
I think April's the only one who asked a question up to this point, and I sort of answered that for her. But it's a really good one thing that Catherine shared, that personal experience, do better than I did the first time I took the GRE. I did not prepare for it. I took it post-graduation, and I thought, I've spent 4 years in my undergrad program, right? I'm going to be totally ready for this. And although I was ready with the content, I wasn't familiar with the test structure as well as the questions and the way they were being asked, the question types. I didn't really familiarize myself with the time and things like that I had. So if I could go back and do it over again, because I did retake it because I did not prepare for it like I wish I would have the first time. But just because you have the knowledge knowing the context and knowing the way that the questions are going to be asked and what they're really looking for really helps you to take it to the very next level so that you can perform at your very best.
I think I never even heard of the GRE test until you guys sent me the email for this. And so I was really, really glad that you guys did. So I could now be better prepared for it. So like you said, I'm glad that you said that, because now I'll know what I'm walking into, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you get to your senior year and you're like, I have all this knowledge. Surely I'm going to do great on this. And it's not that you won't do well on it. It's just being able to know the context of it, the format, the timing. That's how you really prepare yourself. And the free test prep. The free test prep is the closest thing you can do to take the test, the actual test itself prior to taking the test. It really is a beneficial way to be prepared.
Well, you said this will be recorded. Where do we find the copy of this recording at?
That is a great question. Dr. Kudali will have to answer that. But I think he might be multitasking and in that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. How much does the GRE cost, and are the unofficial test scores different from the official test scores that you get 10 to 15 days after the test?
Yes. Let's see here. I know. Dawn, do you know what? We're about in November. There's a slight increase in the price, so I want to just make sure I have.
Yeah, I'm pulling that up now.
Yeah. I want to say 205, but remember you get the discount today.
Yeah,
but
it's 205 right now, but then you guys get that $30 discount to use within the next 45 days.
Yes. And then she was asking too that the unofficial scores versus the official scores. Is there anything in that the bulletin there, Dawn? I mean,
I'm looking for that. There's
Because-
nothing in here in the bulletin right now, but that might be one of the things we have to look up and get back to share with Dr. Kudali, and he could share it out with the rest of the group. It's very rare that they aren't the same. It's just going through a verification process, but we will look that up and get that back to you so we can give you a more specific answer.
yeah.
And
And
question, I said earlier that I was only a junior, so I won't graduate until, like I said, earliest is next year. But I do want to go straight through, no breaks, because I know how I will be. So I'm straight through to my master's and PhD. Will anything be different by the time that I get to that point to test?
What year you're a junior now?
Yes, I'm a junior now. Yes, I'm almost done with my bachelor. I have one more semester to my bachelor's. Yes.
If anything changes, it'll be reflected in the test prep materials on the website. So if anything changes from this point moving forward, it'll still be in all of the free prep materials. It'll still be available there. And more than likely, April, you can join us again this time next year, and we'll do another walkthrough just to make sure that you're fully prepared. But if anything does change, if there's anything significant that changes, we share that with institutions.
Okay.
But if it's something that's changing, that's not a huge change, we just change and make that update on the website so that students are using that in order to prepare.
I'll make sure I
We got some great questions coming in.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I see Taylor has asked what level of math knowledge do we need to prepare for? So on the slides that Dawn reviewed, make sure you go back to this section in slide 26. It's arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. And we also mentioned there are a lot of different math resources that are available on the website. So you can be sure to take a look at those materials too. And take the practice test, and then it'll get you going and understanding the kinds of questions. Zachary asked, will there be a recording? Yes. And the PowerPoints? Yes, for later review, most definitely. All right, let's see here.
Where are we at now? Level of math. When it comes to the level of math, I do want to jump into that real quick. I think the best way to prepare, as Catherine mentioned, is going back and doing some of the test prep, looking at the quantitative strategies, because if I'm being 100% honest, I have a fifth grader right now, and there's a lot of fifth grade math that I could do years ago that now I'm having to brush up on again. So the best resource that we can tell you is to go back and look at what we put on the website there, because it may be some of those foundational math skills that maybe you haven't used in a while, that are the ones that are kind of the most difficult to look at or to better prepare yourself for. Recommended length of response in the written response question.
Let's see here. I'm looking at some of the detail around the types of
What we normally find in the written responses is if they're looking for a certain word count, it'll be written in the instructions. So it'll say 3-paragraph essay, or it'll say something to that line, or in 250 words or less. So you will be prompted on that information. It's not really as long as you're sticking to whatever guidelines are in the question, it's not the length as much as it is, are you answering the question in the right context? And are you using the strategies like Catherine mentioned, if it's an argumentative piece or a different type of essay? So it's more about the context of it than it is the length. But anything that's length specific would be in the instructions.
And then also in one of those topic pools that we mentioned for the writing section, there's some more detail around like the directions. But also what I was wanting to share with you is that the raters, the live people that score your essays, they know about the time constraints and they consider that in your response. They kind of view it as your first draft, so to speak. But you will still want to put the best possible example of your writing that you can produce under those kind of testing conditions. So I mean, they're highly trained raters, and they understand the time constraints. Let me just see if there's anything else here on that. Yeah, no, I think
I have one more quick question, if you don't mind. Is there a general area that people tend to do the worst on, like, you know what I mean? Like, is it just all over? If
It really depends on what your strengths are. Honest to goodness, I've always been more verbal than I have quantitative. So I know going into it what my strengths are. Although I'm going to study for every section of it now that I've learned my lesson. I know where I personally need a little bit of help, or I will tell you what's changed as I've gotten older is that I email and text more than I write argumentative essays. So if you're not in that mind frame of really committing to that sort of analytical writing and brushing up on that, doing some of the free practice tests will help. But it really depends on, how you know yourself. If you open up if thinking of doing a math test right now makes you break out in hives, then you might want to consider really brushing it up on that area. But it wouldn't hurt to brush up on all 3 of the categories, because knowing what to expect and knowing the content is really the way to best prepare and to feel most comfortable going into it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
there's a question here from Justice about which GRE to take. So today we reviewed the GRE general test, but because you're going into chemistry and biochemistry in particular, you were asking like, which should you take? Now we do have what are called the GRE subject tests, and there's one for chemistry. So you will want to look at the program that you're looking to apply and see if they'll put on there if the GRE general test is required or if they prefer for you to take the subject test. It just depends on what the program requirements are.
And Catherine, I'll jump in on the next one. The question I saw that come up next is, how much of a difference is the GRE from something like the ACT? That's a good question. The way to think about it is the ACT is a college entrance exam, right? So it's going to take everything you've learned from high school, right? 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade to get you ready for, let's say, undergraduate admission. Whereas the GRE is a graduate school entrance exam. So it's going to take a comprehensive look at what you have looked at over the past 4 years in your undergrad study. And what it's really looking for is your level of graduate school preparedness. So it's going to be high stakes, of course, because it is an admissions test, but it's going to really look at what you have studied in the past 4 years when it comes to verbal and quantitative reasoning, as well as the analytical writing strategies that you come up with, the best way that you can write that you can use your verbal reasoning and quantitative skills, but it's going to be more on a collegiate level than it would the high school level, like an ACT.
Great.
And there's no equivalency, by the way. So if you took the ACT once upon a time and you're looking at GRE, there is no way to predict one for the other.
And then it looks like there's a question about, does it cost more if you need to take it multiple times? No, it doesn't. Unless we happen to have a price increase, then it would cost more. And we do have a price increase coming in November. So take it before then. And also don't forget the WKU 30 discount code will get $30 off for you to take the test. I think we've answered all the questions. I think we got them all. Does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, hold on here. Let's see, there, I do have that date. Hold on, what date will the price go up? Do you remember it off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's November 1st.
Okay, is it November 1st? Okay.
It is November 1st, and it increases by $15. And yes, the PowerPoint will be made available. More than likely, Catherine, as your process, send it Dr. Kudali. He sends it out from there, more than likely.
Hmm. The new price, is that a new question? Are you aware of the new price? Before November, it's $205. The price increase is $15, so it will be $220.
So with the price increase, are they changing anything about the test? Like, do you guys know why they're increasing the price?
The test isn't changing, no. We just go through periodic price increases.
Let's look at the next one. I'm double majoring in English and Psych. Good for you, by the way. That's awesome. Does it impact your enhanced grades? I think the thing to remember here is something Catherine and I think both had in our slides earlier is you want to answer, you want to write, you're asking about the writing section, so the analytical writing section. You don't want to pull too much from outside of the context of the question. So when you read the question and you're answering it, make sure that you're answering that question and you're not trying to draw too much from the outside information. Catherine, I think in her slide, there was things like humor and irony, keep to a minimum. I believe in my verbal reasoning slides, it mentioned only answering the question as it's asked, more than trying to turn it into, let's say, a psychology message if the question's not about psychology itself. But I think if you really go in and look at some of the sample questions in all the sections, that'll make you feel more comfortable on, okay, how would I answer this if I were being asked to report on this or asked to write on this right now? But it's really about answering the question at hand more than using your background. The question may not be about psychology.
Right, because remember the analytical writing section has analyze an issue, where you're taking a look at an issue and you're developing an argument about that issue. And then the other one is analyze an argument, where you're assessing the soundness of an argument that's being presented to you. So that one might be pretty tough to kind of harken back to your psychology background. Sure. Thank you. I think Dr. Kudali had another meeting that he had to attend, but we'll make sure, I know that they will make sure everybody has a link to materials. I just we don't know where they're posted, but I know they're planning on posting it. And I know there's a YouTube channel too, so they may post it to the YouTube channel as well. But I'm sure, are keeping track with who has attended today, and we'll follow up with you to make sure you have the materials. But thank you so much for attending here today and joining us, and for all your great questions. I hope we've provided you kind of a path forward on how to move forward. And good luck and best